Hey guys, it's Abi from Autumn of Pellinor, and today I'm going to be going through my top 5 memoirs. So this is a series idea. This is a series idea that I've stolen from Alex Black Reads. I will link her channel and her top 5 memoir video below. I did check with her, I've messaged her, she's cool with me doing this. And I'm going to be doing the series. I've got a couple of videos that are different to hers, and some of the topics are exactly the same. So I will link all of her videos down below for each individual one, so you can go watch it, obviously. But the idea is quite simple. I tell you my top 5 favourites for the category. This time, memoirs. Now, I can only actually find 3 of the books. The two in the thumbnail I'm holding are just random books. So let's do the image ones first. The first one is The 7 Months of Anne Frank by Villy Lindver. This is a memoir in a different kind of format. Usually it's written by the individual. This is a memoir written by someone else, but from the memories of those people. So it's still non-fiction. It's not like The Tattooist of Auschwitz, where it's been fictionalised. It is still non-fiction. It is still these women's words. It's just been written down by Villy Lindver instead of each individual woman, and they all spent time with Anne Frank in the camps. Now obviously there are many people who deserve to have their story told, not just Anne, but it is a good marketing tactic and also like a good way to get people to read about it. We all know about Anne Frank, and so then we feel a connection with her, and knowing that these women met her and spent time with her encourages people, including myself, to pick the book up. Because it's like, oh, these people saw Anne Frank, but they obviously have their own stories to tell. And these 6 women, I think, it's just 7 months, these women survived their time in the concentration camps. Their stories are harrowing and intense, and it's not the easiest book to read. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's easy and happy, but I really do recommend it. It's an important read to see these people who have survived the horrors of World War II. Next up, still within surviving horrors in a war zone, but a little more recent, I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai is her memoir of her time before and after being shot in the head by the Taliban for advocating for girls' education. Malala is at Oxford, I believe. I think things are obviously a bit wibbly right now, but she is at Oxford University here in the UK because after she was shot in the head, she was brought to Britain for treatment. She was advocating for girls' education well before she was shot. She was always fighting for it. Her father was very much on her side for this, and just reading about that and reading about how things changed over time and what she noticed as a child is incredibly interesting and also quite sad. I promise that not all of these are sad. I promise. But it also isn't sad in the fact that we know that Malala is happy and healthy today. So that's obviously a positive. She suffered incredibly, but she's an incredibly strong woman, and it's wonderful to read her words. There is a teenage, a kid, and an adult version, I believe. The kids version is short and sweet, the teenage version is a little bit in between, and the adult version has everything, so you can kind of delve as far as you want to go into it. I have the teenage version because that was what was on sale, and my mum got me it, and my mother is Scottish, take the stereotypes as you will. And I'm perfectly happy with having read that. It is definitely appropriate for teenagers of any age, from even tween, from 11 and 12 up to 18, and I just think it's a really important book to read, because although we have come very far with women's rights, there are still areas in the world where it isn't quite as equal as we would like it to be. Then let's go for the last one that's kind of sad, and then we'll move into happier things. And that is Call the Midwife by Jennifer Worth. So this, she's actually written a series of memoirs. They are down here. Can you see them in the camera? No, they are underneath here. I have them all. I've read all of them bar one, which is in my little TBR cart box scenario. And these are memoirs of her time working as a midwife in the East End of London in the 1950s. The reason this is still kind of sad is because whenever I watch the TV show, BBC did a brilliant adaptation, or read the books, I cry a lot. Some of the children don't survive. Just to be blunt, some of the mothers don't survive. There are stories of them just kind of going in as nurses rather than midwives for certain situations. There's one woman I remember reading about who was in the workhouses, which is quite sad. But these are also stories of hope and of wonder and of life, and they are written beautifully. Jennifer Worth has passed away, sadly. She passed away before the BBC series was actually published. She did get to watch the first season, but before it was actually aired. But her writing is beautiful, and I really do recommend, if you are at all interested in midwifery or nursing or London in the 1950s, or if you've just watched the show, because I would not have put myself in that camp. I would not have said that I was interested in this, and yet I love these books. So if you're unsure as to whether you will care, I recommend going on BBC iPlayer if you can. I don't know how non-British people would do this. Find a way. And watch just the first episode and see if you want to read about it. Because it is a really good adaptation, especially that first season. Very topical. This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This is a man who used to be a junior doctor. He is now a comedian, I think? God knows. But this is essentially his diaries. They've been edited, obviously. I'm assuming some names have been changed, and I'm assuming things aren't quite as they were, but they've tried to maintain a very much diary aspect of it. Some entries rather will go over multiple pages, some entries will just be less than a quarter of a page, but it does showcase what junior doctors go through in a non-pandemic world. This is pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, this is just normal day-to-day doctor stuff, and it's mad. And this will give you a new appreciation for what the NHS does. I have seen some reviews of people saying that he should stop whining. I massively disagree. I am very lucky to have benefited from the NHS. I have had a heart operation, I have had migraine treatments since I was 15, and literally I pay for my prescriptions, which are a set price other than a few specific drugs, and the bus to get to the hospital. My heart operation, like, if you include the cost that me and my mum paid for the bus and the taxi back, cost us less than a tenner for me to have a heart operation. The NHS is a national treasure. We need to appreciate it now more than ever. We needed to appreciate it more normally. Right now, we really need to appreciate it. So I definitely recommend reading this. If you're American and watching this, this could give you a look into the NHS and why sometimes we complain about it. Because it isn't run as smoothly as it could be, because it is government funded, so they don't always get enough funding. However, it saves lives and we don't have to pay for anything. Like, literally. Any Brits watching, in case you didn't know, in the US you have to pay to give birth. You have to pay to hold your child after you give it. That's 100% free in the UK. You just phone the ambulance, you're like, yo, I'm in labour, or you drive yourself, you know, either or. And then you get to the hospital, and then you give birth, and then you hold the baby, and then like everything's done, whether that's C-section, whether that's like a massive big operation, or whether you just give birth. And it's free. It doesn't cost you a penny. US, it can cost like 10 grand. Read the book. Appreciate the NHS, please. And then my final of my top 5 memoirs is The Secret Barrister by The Secret Barrister. So this is by an anonymous author. This author is still a barrister in the UK. Again, this is UK law. And so it is anonymised. They have a Twitter account. I think it's just at The Secret Barrister if you're wanting to know more about them. This is just really interesting. Again, like I said, it's UK law specific. Carrie from Caring for Books, she works within the law area in the US, so you might be interested in reading this memoir about the law in the UK. This will go over different cases, how they've been handled, and kind of how you have to deal with the law in the UK. One of the like bullet points it lists out as like, oh, things that have been mentioned in this book is why do we wear the stupid wigs. So it does kind of go through like the silly questions that we all have about the law, especially in the UK with the wigs. But also just kind of like the human cost and fighting for someone who you know is guilty, but you've still got to defend them. And it's just really, really interesting, really eye-opening, and there is a reason that this author has had to remain anonymous. It's incredibly interesting, and I really recommend. I've realised that all these books are quite UK-centric. I mean, obviously Malala is not originally from the UK, but she came here, we gave her the treatment and the operation for when she was shot, and she stayed here ever since, so that half of the book will be UK centric. The Anne Frank one, not UK centric, well, Anne Frank, the Holocaust one is not UK centric, but this is about UK law. This is about UK junior doctors, both modern day, and this is about 1950s English, specifically midwives. So apparently I really like non-fiction memoirs about Britain, which I guess makes sense, but I didn't know that at the time. So if you have read any of these or are going to, let me know down in the comments below. Tell me what you think of these, whether you think you're going to pick them up. Just let's have a chat. And if you want to see any more from me, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!